Welcome to Danny After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight, we will be featuring the case of Carl Panzram. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Carl Panzram. He was born June 28, 1891 in Minnesota. He was the son of Prussian immigrants and was raised on his family's farm. He was first arrested at age 8. Yes, age 8, for drunk and disorderly conduct. 3 years later, after a series of robberies, he landed up in a reform school. So he decided to set the place on fire, causing an estimated $100,000 worth of damages. Think how much $100,000 was back then. At age 14, he ran away from home. He decided he wanted to live a more transient life. When he was in a boxcar, he was gang raped by 4 men. He said of the incident, quote, "I cried, I begged, and pleaded for mercy, pity, sympathy, but nothing I could say or do could sway them from their purpose. I left that box a sadder, sicker, but wiser boy," end quote. In 1907, Panzram enlisted in the U.S. Army. Shortly after he enlisted, he was jailed from 1908 to 1910 for larceny. Let's flash forward to 1922. Panzram raped and murdered a 12-year-old boy. He recalled the killing, quote, "His brains were coming out of his ears when I left him. I am not sorry. My conscience doesn't bother me. I sleep soundly and have sweet dreams," end quote. What the heck? Next, he went on to New York. He would convince sailors to come on board his yacht. When they were asleep, he would grab his gun and blow their brains out. In total, he killed 10 sailors. Panzram then raped and killed an 11-year-old boy. He killed him by bashing his head with a rock. He later made a statement about the incident saying, quote, "I left him there, but first I committed sodomy on him, and then I killed him. His brains were coming out of his ears when I left him, and he will never be any deader," end quote. Next, Panzram lived several weeks in a fishing village. He hired 6 natives to take him to the jungle to hunt crocodiles. Sounds innocent enough. However, as they went downriver, Panzram got out his gun and shot and killed all 6 men. He shot them in the back, one by one. Then he took their bodies and fed them to the hungry crocodiles. Panzram then arrived in Salem, Massachusetts. Shout out to my stomping ground, Salem, Massachusetts. While there, July 18, 1922, he came across a 12-year-old boy who was walking alone. Panzram said, quote, "You will find that I've consistently followed one idea throughout all of my life. I preyed upon the weak, the harmless, and the unsuspecting," end quote. Panzram committed sodomy on the boy 6 times, 6. And then he killed him by beating his brains out with a rock. He said of the incident, quote, "I left him lying there with his brains coming out of his ears," end quote. Panzram then sailed a boat into a small bay off of the Hudson River. A young man agreed to come on board as a potential buyer. When the man was on board, Panzram then stated the man tried to rob him, so he shot him in the head 2 times. He then tied metal weights onto the body and threw the body overboard. That's Panzram's recollection of what happened. Who knows? January 26, 1923, Panzram broke into the Larchmont train depot. A Larchmont cop happened to come by, and after a struggle, Panzram was arrested. At the police station, Panzram identified himself as John O'Leary, which was one of his many, many aliases. While there, he confessed to 3 additional break-ins, so the police charged him with 3 additional burglaries. A few weeks later, Panzram was indicted by a grand jury in regards to the Larchmont burglary. He was given a 5-year jail sentence. While Panzram was behind bars, he then himself was repeatedly sodomized And when he tried to escape, he was very, very badly injured. Well, he didn't get the proper medical attention he needed. So due to that injury not getting taken care of, he was left permanently crippled. July 1928, after serving the 5 years, Panzram was released. Within 2 weeks, he committed a dozen burglaries and killed at least one man during a robbery in Baltimore. At the booking of that, he gave his real name for the first time in years. Each day Panzram was in jail, he confessed to more and more crimes he had committed. For some reason, one of the prison guards, his name was Henry Lesser, took pity on Panzram. He befriended him. He would give him $1 here and there for cigarettes, extra food. The thing with that is, Panzram was not even used to the smallest gesture of compassion. So in exchange, Panzram agreed to write his life story for the guard. In the 20,000-word confession, he gave details of his murders, which were all confirmed with local authorities where these crimes had been committed. He supplied dates, times, places where all of these crimes occurred, as well as his arrest history, which was extremely extensive. Panzram also had some opinions on the criminal justice system and the power that society has over the individual. He blames crime on society. He says it perpetuates itself by producing more and more criminals. Panzram said, quote, "I am 36 years old and I've been a criminal all my life. I have 11 felony convictions against me. I have served 20 years of my life in jail, reform schools, prisons. I know why I am a criminal," end quote. Page after page, Panzram described his crimes of killing and rape. He never showed any feelings of guilt or remorse. Now, he was on trial for the burglary and housebreaking charges. While on trial, he foolishly decided to act as his own attorney. He would frequently terrify the jury, and his behavior was unpredictable and very combative. At the end of his trial, Panzram took the stand. Not only did he admit to the burglary, but he told the court that he intentionally remained in the house for several hours, hoping that the homeowners would come home so he could kill them. Not sure how that was going to try to get him out of this. Not surprisingly, on November 12, 1928, he was found guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 15 years on the first count and 10 years on the second. And those terms were to run consecutively. So Panzram would have to serve 25 years in prison. In jail, he was assigned laundry duty, room service. That entailed sorting and washing the inmates' clothing. June 20th, 1929, Panzram was working in the laundry, as was his usual detail. Leaning against the door was a 4-foot-long iron bar. So Panzram picked up the bar and he approached his supervisor, who was in the room preparing paperwork. Panzram raised the bar high over his shoulders and brought it down squarely on his supervisor's head. His skull broke instantly. Panzram then continued to smash the bar continuously on the man's head, sending blood and bone matter all over the room. There were other inmates who were in the laundry room that day who watched in horror. When the men tried to escape, Panzram decided, well, since he killed one man, he might as well just kill all the others. So he attacked them, and they screamed and screamed for help. Well, dozens of armed security guards came running to the laundry room to help save the other men. The guards saw Panzram. He was holding the steel bar, his clothes were shredded, and he was covered from head to toe in fresh blood. Panzram now stood trial on April 14, 1930, for his supervisor's murder. While on trial, he was defiant and uncooperative. Panzram stated he didn't want a lawyer and said, quote, "I plead not guilty. Now you go ahead and prove me guilty. Understand?" End quote. Throughout his testimony, he sat in his chair and smiled at the witnesses. Well, the jury took only 45 minutes to find Panzram guilty, with no recommendation for mercy. For Panzram, the death sentence was a relief, and he resisted every attempt at a stay of execution. In fact, there was a group that was called the Society for the Abolishment of Capital Punishment. They petitioned the government's office asking for a pardon for Panzram. Well, that infuriated him, absolutely infuriated him. Now, September 5th, 1930, Panzram was taken from his cell for the last time at 5:55 a.m. and escorted to the gallows. His demeanor, rebellious as always. He spit in the executioner's face, snarled, and said, quote, "Hurry up, you bastard. I could kill 10 men while you're fooling around," end quote. At exactly 6:03 a.m., the trap doors sprung open with a crash. Panzram dropped 5.5 feet down. His body jerked repeatedly and swung from side to side. And then there was sudden silence. Panzram was pronounced dead at 6:18 a.m. To end this case, Panzram once said, quote, "In my lifetime, I have murdered 21 human beings. I have committed thousands of burglaries, robberies, larcenies, arsons, and last but not least, I committed sodomy on more than 100 male human beings. For all of these things, I am not in the least bit sorry." And that is the case of Carl Panzram. Thank you for staying for an episode of Danny After Dark. Again, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Let's be interactive. Leave a comment. Do you have a question about the case? Did something stick out to you? Leave it down below. Do you have a suggestion for an upcoming case that you'd like me to cover? Leave it down below. You might see it in a future episode. And remember, we don't live in darkness. Darkness lives in us.